This is Maruku, and welcome back to part 6 of What If Deku Had a Corruption Quirk. In the last part, Deku and Bakugo were caught by the League of Villains during the camp arc. So let's continue from there. Deku started to wake up, noticing his surroundings were not like that of his home, or even his camp bunk, but a metal chair inside of a bar. He lifted his head and looked around, and he saw Bakugo sitting next to him in a similar chair, but his hands were bound by metal constraints in the front. He then remembered what happened. He remembered getting caught by the League of Villains. He remembered them taking him and Bakugo. He remembered being able to just barely get Tokoyami away from Mr. Compress before flying into the portal and being knocked unconscious. But from there, he was drawing blanks. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know what to do. He was unsure of the course of action he should take in order to get out of this situation. It left him unsure of himself. And that's when he heard a noise come from a door at the end of the bar. And in walked Tomura Shigaraki. Deku looked him dead in the eyes with an angry sneer of remembrance from when he attacked the students at the USJ. And that's when Shigaraki noticed that Deku was awake. A big, toothy smile crept upon his face as he walked over to Deku.
Ah, little Izuku Midoriya. Finally awake, I see. I wonder, how does it feel being on the other side of a compromising situation? I never got to thank you for taking off my fingers. But I can put that aside for now. I'll go get the others. And then we can all have a nice chat. You, me, and your little friend Bakugo there.
Deku's mouth was bound, so he really couldn't say much. He couldn't scream. He couldn't bare his teeth. He couldn't do much of anything but watch as Shigaraki mocked him, toyed with him. Shigaraki turning around and making his way back to the door to go call the others. From here, we're going to have a story shift where now we'll be in the perspective of the students at UA. They were all worried sick. They weren't sure on what to do. They didn't know what they could do. When they got back, they learned that Yaoyorozu had attached a GPS device to one of the Nomu, but they weren't sure where to go from there. Heck, they didn't know what they could do. Uraraka was plagued by it. Deku and Bakugo had been missing for 3 days. By this point, she had endless nightmares. Nightmares plaguing every waking dream of hers. Of her finding Deku mangled and broken and on the cusp of death. And right as she gets to him, he looks into her eyes and dies. Those are the type of nightmares that plague Uraraka's mind. She's hardly able to process any of it by this point. She works up the courage to gather a couple of the students, the ones that she knows would do anything for Deku and Bakugo. She goes to Todoroki, Ida, Sue, Tokoyami, Kirishima, Denki, Yaoyorozu. She goes to all of them, begging them, pleading with them to help her go save Bakugo and Deku. Sue doesn't want anything to do with it. She doesn't want to get in trouble, and she believes that the pros will take care of it. Ida, even though being very strict about the rules, thinks back to when Deku helped him fight Stain, helped him to get revenge for his brother, in a sense. And he didn't want to not return the favor to Deku for his act. Todoroki wanted to help his friend, the friend who helped him realize that his quirk is his alone. It has nothing to do with his father, whether he uses it or not. Todoroki was in, and he wasn't willing to leave Deku when he needed him the most. Yaoyorozu, she didn't want to forget that Deku had sacrificed a lot in order to protect them at the USJ. She felt obligated to help him as well as the others. Kirishima, he cared for both Deku and Bakugo. Him and Bakugo had grown a amazing friendship. They'd become close as brothers, and Kirishima couldn't just leave his brother behind. He wanted to prove to himself that he's changed, that he's not the scared little boy he used to be. Collectively, those who wanted to go had decided that they'll go regardless of if they get in trouble or not, just to save their friends. This would lead to a team of Uraraka, Todoroki, Ida, Momo, Kirishima, and I'll say, yeah, that's about it. That's a good enough team for this. Now, they know that they can't just go bumping around a villain's base in their typical clothes, otherwise they'll get recognized. So they go out and try and find some disguises to wear in order to do this mission. Now, technically, most of the outfits go to Kennen, Ida obviously looks like, I don't even know what. I'd say that he looks like a dork, kind of. Todoroki kind of just looks like a bartender who's way too young for his own good. Let's see, Kirishima just looked like he was doing too much. And I'm gonna get on with the more important costume. Uraka, what she did was she got herself a pair of glasses, a bunch of, I'll say bandage straps. She put one over her nose. She put 2 on her left cheek. She got herself a silver necklace and a razor blade, and created a punk rock necklace, a white shirt that said hero on it, and crossed it out with black lines. A jacket that looks kind of similar to her hero outfit. Some black leggings. She cut a bunch of tears into them. Put on some, I'll say, distressed shorts. Denim shorts, kind of like booty shorts. Got herself some old blue dark kind of shoes, and had a like 2 skull and crossbone pendants in her hair. Yeah, that's the outfit I'm going with. Now, after suiting up, each of the members of the Deku Bakugo rescue squad decided to follow the GPS signal of the tracker that Yorozu decided to put on the Nomu. They would follow it all the way down until they reached a warehouse. Now, they thought to themselves, why would the heroes think that the villains would be in this warehouse? Well, then Ida reasoned that maybe the reason that the villains chose a warehouse is because of the fact that it looks super abandoned, so no one would really go poking around in it. Though Ida thought that even the heroes wouldn't be fooled by such a dumb hideout cliche. Uraka, in an attempt to see what's inside of the warehouse, touched her shoes to make them weightless, along with herself, and carefully floated up towards one of the windows of the warehouse. And when she looked inside, her stomach sank at the sight. In front of her looked to be over 100 vats, each holding a Nomu inside of it. She looked to the others, awestrucken, and told them that this wasn't the villain hideout, this was a Nomu warehouse. They were shocked. They didn't know what to say. They went on a wild goose chase, only to find a bunch of Nomus and pods. And that led Uraka to wonder, where was Deku at? Now we're going to story shift back to where Deku and Bakugo are. Back in the League of Villains bar, Deku was trying to think of a way to get out. And that's when he saw Bakugo begin to stir in his chair before eventually starting to freak out by the fact that he was strapped down to a chair. And then seeing Deku awake, relieved that he wasn't alone, he gestured with his eyes, "Where are we?" Deku's hands weren't covered up entirely, so he used his hands to mimic letters to tell Bakugo that they're in the villain base. Bakugo, having understood the message, nodded his head and began looking around, the both of them trying to think of ways to escape the situation. And that's when Shigaraki and the others start walking back in from the entrance across the bar, with Kurogiri manifesting behind the bar. Shigaraki slowly walking up to the both of them.
"Ah, I see that both of you are awake now. More fun for me, then. Well, as you both know by now, you are our prisoners. Our little toys to play with as we wish. And I have a vendetta against at least one of you for maiming my hand."
Deku gulped, started to sweat a little bit.
"But the master doesn't want me to kill you. In fact, I think he wants to talk a bit. Now, let's have some fun while Master is getting ready."
He walks over to Bakugo and unmuzzles both him and Deku.
"Now, the master would like to talk to the both of you and invite the both of you to join us at the League of Villains. So much so that he decided to come in person."
The air around both Deku and Bakugo grew a little bit thick at the seams. The atmosphere carried with it an evil, choking aura that made Deku sick to his core. He felt like he couldn't even breathe, and that's how dense the air was around him. When a man wearing a very ugly black mask strode through the door, walking up to Deku and Bakugo. Now, I'm not going to do an all-for-one voice because that wouldn't exactly sound great. So I'm just going to improvise a bit. Just a little bit. Now, you boys have amazing quirks. I will admit, I'm finding it rather hard to restrain myself from just plucking them right out of you. But I'll give you a chance. If you join my League of Villains, you get to keep your quirks, and I might even reward you from time to time. But if you prove to be a burden to my plans, I will not hesitate to take your quirk and end your lives at this very moment. Now, young Bakugo, I see potential in your quirk. A quirk that could very well level building after building after building. What sweet chaos I could have in that. And you, young Izuku, your quirk is so evil, it makes my long dead one jump with joy at the implications of what you could do with such a power. But I'll give you a chance. I'll even try and show you the light of the darkness inside of you, boy. I heard what you did to my Nomu. I heard what you did to all those villains that I sent after your class and All Might. I must say, I'm rather impressed with the lack of restraint you showed. I'm even impressed at how seamlessly you cut each and every one of them down. Even my impressive Nomu, you managed to kill it. Granted, not with perfect ease and no damage to your body, but I see a lot of potential in you. You can ask Shimura. When I see potential, it's a very good compliment, my boy. Now, tell me, are you willing to join my league, or are you going to die like a sniveling little rat trying to cling to life? Deku dropped his head low, remembering all those he maimed and killed unintentionally at the USJ. Every life having weighed on his mind on a loop. He was told later that the Nomu was no longer human and he had no need to feel regret for taking its life. Deku raised his head and said he'll do it. Bakugo, turning his head, yelling at Deku, what is he doing? They were both supposed to be heroes together. Why would he throw this away? He yelled, almost tearing away his vocal cords. Shigaraki stepped in. Shut your mouth, brat! The master's talking. I see, said All for One. So you don't want to join my league? Well, that's a shame. A real shame. Let's see how far your friend here is willing to go, since you don't have the strength to go as far as him. They unclamped Deku, and All for One stepped back. Deku, having been freed from his shackles, stood to his feet, declaring that he would get rid of Bakugo in the process. Bakugo was mortified. He didn't believe what he was hearing. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His old rival, friend, so easily turned to the dark. That's when Deku turned and walked in front of Bakugo, putting his hand to Bakugo's head. I'm sorry, Bakugo, but I don't want to die yet. I hope you understand. And at that moment, while the villains were not paying attention, Deku created a very, very tiny, thin, corrupted whip and quickly undid Bakugo's shackles before putting the corrupted whip gently over his lips and quietly saying, "Shh." After the restraints were undone, while the others weren't paying attention, Deku said, "Do you have any last words, Bakugo Katsuki?" Bakugo smiled a toothy grin, said, "I've got plenty, you damn nerd," before Deku took his hand off of Bakugo and shot behind him he turns around and sweeps all the villains, including All For One, with his corruption whips as Bakugo swings back around and comes around Deku using all the nitroglycerin that he had on his hands and creates a massive explosion that hits all of them at once, shooting him and Deku back. All For One at this point is infuriated, and I mean really infuriated, at the fact that what he thought was going to be an easy recruitment just got more complicated, and that he was going to have to snuff out such raw young potential at a symbol of anarchy. That's when a sudden knock came, and All For One turned his head, puzzled. What in the world is what he said? Even Tomura was set off by that, like, what? And a voice came out of nowhere saying, "Pizza delivery," which I still think was the most retarded thing you could have said in that situation when busting into a villain base, but to each his own. Anyway, as in canon, All Might bursts through the door, and in an attempt to get his successor out of there, All For One teleports Shigaraki to the other side of Kamino. And when All Might lays eyes on All For One, his heart stops for a second and he really starts to grasp the situation with his own successor and young Bakugo. Before All For One decidedly sends them through a portal as well, and this time has them also in Kamino, but in a wider space. That way that Shigaraki can take, and the others can take care of Deku and Bakugo while he deals with All Might. Now, as in canon, the area that they were all teleported to is actually next to the Nomu factory. Which I don't see exactly why they didn't kind of take advantage of that fact, but anyway. So, they're all put in the position where both Deku and Bakugo are having to fight off the League of Villains while All Might is dealing with All for One. Now, Deku, having seen All Might and knowing that he's facing the greatest evil who is the cause of him having to have his time limit due to the injury, he wants to help too. He wants to help put an end to All for One, but he knows that this is a personal fight for All Might, and that he doesn't want Deku to interfere, I'll say. So Deku instead is trying to keep on his toes, get away from the villains, and also defeat them as well. But this isn't going very well in his corner. That's when the fear from Bakugo, and to his surprise, his friends, starts leaking into the air. Bakugo wants to get out of the situation, and Deku can feel his friends nearby. He can feel the fear coursing through their blood. It's palpable. And his percentage rises and rises and rises by the second. He knows that they're just waiting for an opportune moment to step in, and Deku has to give them that opening. So in an attempt to try and help get to demolish the League of Villains as early as possible, he gathers as much corruption into his body as possible, trying to figure out the best course of action to deal with this. So he fuels himself and calls on his, I'll say, dagger. He calls on his... No. I'll say his sword, his katana. So he pulls it out, and he fills it to the brim with as much corruption as he can. And his eyes are working really fast to keep to keep track of each villain. Because they seem like they're going willy-nilly, but in reality, they're just switching. They'll strike at him for one attack, and then they'll go and strike at Bakugo for a separate attack. Picking up the same loop with each other. It's like a random chain. It looks like it's going to be chaotic, but in reality, with enough foresight on the idea and battle IQ, anyone could see it coming. So Deku uses this to his advantage. He carefully watches as each of them is attacking Bakugo and then him. And that's when he sees Twice coming at him. He watched as Twice had tried to use his measuring tape to strike at Bakugo before flipping back to attack Deku. This is when Deku, using his very sharp dark katana, decides to I'll say lop a couple fingers off. Now, mind you, this accidentally kind of triggers Twice's kind of like PTSD to fix itself, like in a really screwed up way. But on the other hand, full power Twice early. Though we're going to have to get rid of him. So, because the fact that now that he has lost, I'll say about 4 fingers, he's going to bleed out very quickly. Like, I mean, really quickly. So he's put out. Unless they can kind of heal him. Like, get him medical attention quickly. But I'm not going to get into that. Then, Toga is upset at this point. She sees that Jean, and I do remember his name now, has officially been taken out of the fight. This pisses off Tomura a lot. And as he's running to take revenge on Deku for having taken his fingers, Deku does a slide move where he slides in between Tomura's legs and cuts his Achilles tendon. I'm not even fronting that. Now, I told you in the beginning that this Deku is going to be very, very strong. And I've recently seen what Tomura does in the future, and I feel like Malice is now fueling the story. Yeah, so there goes his tendon. He's not going to be able to use, I'll say, his left leg anymore. Yeah, take that, Tomura. Take that. Anyway, this leads him to scream like a banshee. And I mean scream a lot. This offsetting All For One, thinking, damn it, boy, why can't you do anything right? He shoots his, I'd say, All For One finger blade things at Deku before All Might kind of punches him into the face, knocking him back and preventing him from actually doing anything to Deku. Then Deku, using his corrupted katana, defends an attack from Spinner that's coming from his right, almost kind of like puncturing him in a lot of spots with like a bunch of different blades because of his stupid, like, retarded sword. And since the corrupted katana is imbued with all that sweet, sweet corruption, it's going to infect Spinner's body, which is going to cause a lot of hallucinations and nightmares as well. So, from there, we're going to go to Dabi. Yeah, that burnt chicken nugget looking son of a gun. He then tries to shoot up a giant waft of blue flames at Deku before getting the left side of his face exploded by Bakugo. Since there are less enemies, a lot of the stress has been taken off. This knocking Dabi very far towards the right. And this is when the students of UA decide to enact their amazing plan of escape. Todoroki Uraraka having touched Kirishima's back and Ida's back to make them weightless, and Kirishima having hardened his skin to the limit. And just as they broke the wall, Todoroki making that giant ice pillar into the sky as they boost into the air with both Uraraka and Kirishima yelling out for both Deku and Bakugo to come to their aid. Or not come to their aid. To catch up to them so that they can help them escape. This is when Tomura thinks it's a smart idea to take his one-legged self and try and like do that Jeepers Creepers like jump attack thing, like through the air, trying to reach Deku to disintegrate something at least, before both him and Bakugo tear through the air as fast as they can, trying to catch up to the UA squad, as both Todoroki and Momo make their getaway while no one's paying attention. This leading to like Deku reaching out with his corrupted whips towards Uraraka, and her catching the whip by the tip, and him kind of like pulling it back into himself, kind of like a grappling hook kind of way, while Bakugo is still doing the Michael Jackson up to them. Butterfly in the sky, I can fly twice as high. Nope, I didn't do that. Anyway, well, now they have extra jet propulsion to help them get through the air. Anyway, so now that Deku has officially been taken away from the scene with Bakugo, now we're gonna have the fated fight with All For One. And All For One, knowing that his disciple of sorts has been utterly screwed over, destroyed, and messed up, and his team is utterly uglied, even worse now, with Dabi having had the left of his face burned and fried by an explosion, Jean quickly bleeding out by the fingers, and let's see, Shigaraki having had his Achilles cut. Spinner and Toga kind of got off easy because Deku didn't feel the need to fold them anymore since Uraraka and them came. But as a final bit of malice, Deku decided that he was going to have some fun and leave some leftover corrupted residue in the area for him to manipulate from afar. Mind you, I told you he's been figuring out ways to use his powers to his advantage. And his newest ability, I'll call Corrupted Land Space, is going to do a lot of good in this fight coming up. So as soon as they land, they get a nice, beautiful picture of what's going on with All Might. Now, the fight has been going on for a while now, and I'm going to say that All For One decides to do his dumb little speech about how, like, now Deku knows that he can't use the ability too quickly, otherwise it's going to make a problem in the situation with All Might. He knows that he's only going to get a one chance at a surprise attack on All For One. So he has to make it count. Otherwise it's gonna be for nothing. So in his attempt to try and, I'll say, basically shake the battle in his favor with All Might, he takes all the power that he's able to gather together, and he waits for the one moment just before the battle is going to end to basically put an end to help All Might put an end to All For One. So he watches and waits for the opportune time. Then it comes to the part where All For One generates that impossible to defeat move, where he just starts adding quirk after quirk after quirk into his arm before releasing that giant burst onto All Might, leading to him having to use up the rest of his power in order to protect those behind him at the last second stitch effort. This revealing to the world what has become of the symbol of peace, how he has fallen from grace, as All for One put it, how he has become nothing more than a weak, bitter, brittle old man. Deku was infuriated by All for One's retort. How dare he call All Might such horrible things? Deku was reasonably angry at this, and he could see it in All Might's eyes. He knew that the time to help him and to put an end to All for One's evil doing is almost at hand. Right as All Might is about to release the United States of Smash, Deku uses corrupted terrain to grab All for One by the leg, taking him by surprise. All for One quickly tries to destroy what's holding him down and preventing him from getting free, but more corrupted terrain latches onto him, holding him still long enough for All Might to deliver his final smash, taking All for One out in the process. This was hard for Deku because he knew that this would be the pro hero's final battle. And he knew that it was up to him and Uraraka now to be the next symbols of peace for the world. Deku looked down, ashamed. He knew that All Might would have to retire now. But he wasn't going to let it discourage him. He was going to brave it out. Finally, the battle was over. The school decided to give Deku the ability to be out of school for a couple days to recover from the experience, and so that they could also talk to Izuku's mother in order to convince her to allow Deku to move into the dorms. In the last part, I talked about how him and the others were studying in the dorms. Well, that's because in this version, the dorms actually do exist previously, but they were never for the purpose that they were, as they were like in canon. So they get into a meeting with Izuku's mother and talk through what they want to do. And they were able to convince her to allow Deku to continue going to UA. Deku was pleased that his mother would allow him to still go to UA and allow him to still be a hero. Though this did break her heart that she wouldn't be able to have her baby around anymore. Deku loved his mother a lot, but she knew that for her baby to follow his dreams that he couldn't be there, or she couldn't be with him all the time anymore. That he had to basically be on his own for a bit. She knew what she had to do in order to give her Izuku the ability to basically develop and grow stronger. That was the only thing that she had to cling on to help her get through this. So, they all moved into the dorms, and they basically went through the whole process of judging each other's rooms. Now this would go, I'd say, about the same as in canon. And Deku basically, in an attempt to try and have some fun with it too, since now he's going to be living in the dorms from now on, he tries to change up his room preemptively, since he knew that it would be coming. And instead of having the room just full of All Might, he basically, since he could basically tell the intention was coming already, he decided he wanted to kind of mess with the others in a sense by basically having changed up his room to just plain with black curtains, black bed sheets, everything. Just plain Jane room, nothing special, nothing All Might about it. And when everyone goes in there, they're like, wait a minute, we were expecting this to be different. Where's all the All Might merch we thought you'd have? This isn't what we expected. They were all basically upset that their idea of what Izuku's room would be like was kind of not what it was. And Uraraka, she looked at him and she was like, I've seen your room at your actual house. What is this? But he kind of he saw her kind of reaction to this, and he put his finger to his lip in a shh motion, this tipping her off to, oh, I know what he's doing kind of way. So Uraraka, now knowing exactly what Deku is scheming, decides to play quiet, since she knows how Deku would more than likely be kind of embarrassed by this whole display. So she just kind of sits back and watches as the others try and figure out what's going on, since this is nothing like they expected. Now, going on, everyone else's rooms, they'd basically be the exact same as they were. The only difference being that in the couple of times that Deku and Uraraka have spent time over the years, since they've known each other for a long time, there would be, I'll say, a couple of extra Hero 13 action figures inside of Uraraka's room that Deku had gifted her. Now, on the other hand, technically, she was trying to hide it as much as possible, but she had under her bed she had a I can't believe I'm adding this, a very, very not so subtle but at least moderately well hidden homemade Deku plush that she made herself to cuddle with that night. Now Deku didn't know that this even existed, so it was kind of a surprise when he went and sat on her bed just before everyone left, and a tiny, tiny green-haired plushie of Izuku kind of like popped out from under her bed. And when Uraraka turned around and saw Deku grab this plush, she went about as red as a tomato, going, "Deku is not what it looks like." And he looked back at her, "You're cheating on me." Oh, I can't believe I said that. But like in all reality, he's like, "I didn't know you were so good at making plushies, Uraraka. Do you mind making me one?" And she does a double take and like, "Wait, what? You want a plushie?" She returns, and he says, "Yes, I do. I would very much like a plushie made by you." She asks him basically, is there any specific type that he wants? This is when Deku gets a very, very, I'll say, malicious smile. The type of malicious that you don't want to mess with. Uraraka, having taken the hint, shuts her mouth very subtly, turns around with a face as red as a tomato, and implores him to walk out of her room. He sets the mini Midoriya plush down on her pillow and exits the room. And because of the fact that now he knows that she has a plush, he feels inside his feelings are being requited. This is going to bleed a lot into the next episode or part, where I'm going to expand on this little thing a bit more. But for now, let me have my fun. So as he's walking out of her dorm room, and she is very shyly muttering to herself, "Oh my god, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I can't believe he found my plush of him." He, not so subtly, walks behind her and wraps his hand around her waist. She starts to blush a lot, and when she looks at him, he looks back at her. She looks at him in the eyes even deeper, and then he looks into her eyes and says, "What's the matter, Ochako? I thought you wanted your own Midoriya to yourself. Was that not what you wanted, Ochako?" At this point, she's just utterly beet red and is dying at the seams at the fact that Deku has now basically begun to tease her. He pulls her very close and whispers into her ear, "I'm going to make sure that when we hang out later, I'm gonna have a lot of fun with you." She imploded at this, legitimately, is about to die. He is on the brink of utterly murdering her by accident. So, with that being said, I'm going to end this part. I hope you enjoyed. And to all of you out there, don't forget, the shadows are watching.